Hi, I'm Leslie Shaw, and this is my husband, Stephen Shaw.
Hello.
We're the authors of the UFO book, Who They Are and What They're Up To. And we have a documentary about us called Who Are They? And we have our own show, which is Abductions 101 UFOs and the Paranormal Connection. And tonight we're on Unfreaking Believable podcast.
Welcome to another exciting episode of Unfreaking Believable. We invite you to pull up a chair, relax, and join in for the next 40 minutes or so as we bring you guests who will share with you the moments that made a difference in their lives. And it's all because of that one inciting incident. We believe that life is infinitely stranger than fiction, stranger than anything the mind can invent. You might even say, it's unfreaking believable.
Welcome to the podcast. We're your hosts. I'm Jen.
I'm Betsy, and we're missing someone today.
I know.
Yeah, Jenny's out sick and can't join us tonight. So we are doing this without her and we miss her. Jenny, I hope you're feeling better.
Yep, we're trying to hold down the fort. We'll do our best.
Yep.
But I must say, it has been a heck of a week. There's been a lot of people getting sick lately. So Jenny's in good company. My whole house was sick last week.
Oh
And
no, that's
yeah.
not the kind of company you want to hang with.
No.
I want all my friends to feel better. I hate it when my friends are sick, and having you and Jenny both down is like, okay, I have to take care of myself because if I go down, we're out.
Fortunately for me, as a teaching veteran, I have an ironclad immune system. So my period of time that I was sick involved about a couple of hours. I took a nap, and then when I woke up, I was fine. So,
The power of a good nap.
yep. So
Absolutely.
I should thank my mother for my immune system. But that having been said, it is very busy right now. I know you've got a lot going on. I've got a lot going on. I've got show after show after show, like every weekend nowadays. And I've got a new book coming out, and I'm super excited.
Yay! I'm excited for your new book. You want to tell us about it?
Sure. I have my Choose Your Own Adventure style book that is based on the Loch Ness Monster. It is called The Creature in Loch Ness. This has been living rent-free in my head for about 10 years. And if our listeners remember our interview with Ashley Range, who is known as the Nessie Lady, Ashley's been instrumental in helping out with some consulting and bouncing ideas off and introducing me to people who know stuff. And so I'm super, super excited to bring that book out because, it's also a way of getting back kind of in with younger kids, which I'm also looking forward to.
Yeah,
So,
as a teacher, I can see that's your niche right there.
absolutely. So you're going to help me on the Bigfoot book, right? When
Yes,
I work
I'm
on book
ready.
2?
Whenever you want to
Okay.
work on book 2, I'm good to go because I
All
think
right.
that sounds exciting. Of course, I've got book 8 I'm working on in the Veritas Codex series. I'm trying to get that ready to go. And then I started another thriller a couple of weeks ago that I got about halfway through and then had to put it aside to do other stuff because life got busy. So yeah, always writing, always keeping the things moving. That's a good thing.
But you know what? All of this positivity and moving forward leads me into our word of the day.
Ooh, what is it?
Okay, so this one is so much fun to say. I absolutely love it. It's my new favorite word. It's called Illurazoma.
Illurazoma. Okay, what does it mean?
Okay, Illurazoma is the devotion to positive spiritual growth, even in the midst of underlying chaos or darkness.
Ooh, boy, chaos is the optimum word lately. So yeah,
Yes. And I
that's
feel like
great.
that is definitely the feeling I'm charging into 2025 with. So I'm loving that word. Plus, which it has an
Yeah.
X in it, and any word with an X in it is going to be a winner in my book.
That's a cool word. Yeah. My word of the year, I always have a new word of the year is abundance. I'm manifesting abundance. So I manifest that for you too.
Awesome. I'll take it.
And
I'll
for our
take it.
listeners. Yeah. All right. Well, I'm not going to try to replace Jenny's fun facts, but I'm going to do a segment I like to call Did You Know? And considering the topic for this episode, did you know that President Jimmy Carter was the president with the most to say about extraterrestrials? Before his presidency, Carter famously reported seeing a UFO in 1969, which led to his interest in the subject. During his presidential campaign in 1976, he promised that if he were elected, he would make all government information on UFOs and extraterrestrials public. And unfortunately, he did not fulfill that promise, citing national security concerns. but his openness about the topic made him one of the most vocal presidents regarding extraterrestrial life. Bill Clinton was also pretty vocal about it as well. So, yeah.
That is very interesting, and I did not know that. So
Good.
that
All
that
right.
is yes, that is definitely I'm gonna have to think on that one a lot because that's very interesting. But
Yep.
it leads into our guests for this evening. Betsy, you want to
Yeah.
introduce them?
Yeah, absolutely. So tonight we're honored to have with us a truly exceptional couple. Stephen and Leslie Shaw have decades of experience and dedicated research in studying their beliefs in UFOs, ancient history, human evolution, even Tibetan Buddhism. Their extensive work spans numerous disciplines, drawing connections between the often overlooked fields to uncover the truth about our past. Together, they've crafted several fact driven, thought provoking books that challenge conventional views and offer a fresh perspective on mankind's true history. So get ready for an incredible journey as they share their mind blowing discoveries and their truly unfreaking believable stories. So, Stephen and Leslie Shaw, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Ilirozoma and peace and prosperity to your whole audience.
Thank you.
I love that.
Thank you for the lovely intro, but we've only have the one book out right now. We're in the middle of the second one.
Oh, that's right. My mistake. I had thought I saw more than one, but yay, glad to know that there's
She's
more
manifesting abundance for
coming.
you.
I am.
Thank you.
am.
what it
Yes, I
is.
can feel it. I can feel it happening.
Yes.
Just a real quick aside, Jimmy Carter was instrumental, the only guy who was able to dismantle that nuclear meltdown in Ottawa, Canada area back in the late 50s. And he was exposed to a tremendous amount of radiation, but they took that thing apart bolt by bolt. And, he lived to be 100 years of
I was going
age.
to say it didn't
Yeah.
shorten
Sure
his
did.
life.
And, when people really want to give anybody credit, they got to give President Jimmy Carter credit for being an incredible human being.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. I don't like to get into the politics, but he is one of those people that just on his merit alone, everything he's done since his presidency, the things he did before his presidency, top-notch individual, always had the right ethic, the right mindset.
Mhm.
I really look up to him, so I think that's a story I didn't know either. So I'm interested to hear that too.
So you wanted to ask some about some of my experiences that
Yeah, I tell you what, we're going to kind of flip the script on this week's episode. Normally, we would just kind of have some general chit chat, but your story that is so unfreaking believable is really kind of the basis of why we invited you on the show. So we're going to let you tell your stories first, and then we'll have some more conversation. So go right ahead and tell us your unfreaking believable stories.
The mic is yours.
Stephen's whole life, he's been experiencing phenomena, but frequently they come in clusters. And one of the most important clusters happened when you were 18, right?
yes,
Yeah.
January of 1979. And the thing that is very important for the audience to realize that this happened to 5 people. My brother, sister, myself, my mom, my dad, 2 different homes separated by 350 miles. One of the homes we were in the middle of building ourselves because I was a cabinet maker. I was the apprentice. My dad was the master, right? So this was happening simultaneously. And I'll just go through it so that we have the time here. But the first night, my dad came into breakfast and said, my closet doors opened and closed on me last night. And, my sister was there and myself and didn't think too much of it. So the next night, I gave my dad this little book to read because I was starting to study Tai Chi. And I was also very much into Paramahansa Yogananda's work. So I gave him this little book, Metaphysical Meditations, and said, Dad, you might find this interesting. And my dad, we took the book and went into the living room. And about a half an hour later, he came back with this puzzled look on his face. This guy was an ex-cop from Britain, right? Went through World War II. No nonsense guy, but he had a great sense of humor. So I said, Stephen, I'm hearing a silver bell in the wall by the fireplace. And myself being a musician for most of my life, I said, okay, Dad. So I went in there, and sure enough, there's this ding, ding, ding sound that is happening in the wall. And we're just like looking at each other. And then we said, well, look, let's get Karen in, my younger sister. So we asked her to come in. And first thing she says is like, where's that bell coming from? And so we looked at the flue of the fireplace, banged on the wall, trying to, is it a squirrel or whatever? And it went on for a good 10 minutes and then it stopped. And then we just basically wrote it off and just went to sleep. And the next morning, we would always call my brother and my mom that lived in the house we were building up in Sonora, California. And it was just what we did. We're a family. So my mom said to my dad, the funniest thing happened last night, Jeffrey. I heard this bell being rung and I thought it was the phone. So I picked the phone and there was this baritone male voice on the other end said something to the effect of, I am the invisible on Beachy, something like that. And so, I'm just thinking like, what the heck is going on? So I got my brother on the phone, who was 6 years younger than me. And I said, Philip, did the phone ring last night? Because they were in the same room. And he said, no, I didn't hear the phone ring, but Mom did pick up the phone and she was trying to have a conversation. Now, my mom was a known automatic writer, and I can prove that. There's no problem there. So she's the real deal. So the next night, I was sleeping in the bedroom, and I was awakened by a whizzing sound in the ear. Go, pew, pew. And I just thought, well, maybe somebody has a fan on or something like that. So anyway, I looked out my door, and there's a little light on the kitchen. No big deal. So then I rolled over, and then the bed started to move. It was pushed 2 gentle times from the base of the bed. This was a bunk bed, and I was on the bottom part of the bunk bed. And I just thought, L.A., it's an earthquake, been through them, no big deal. And then ignored it, and then 2 more times, a little stronger this time. And then 2 more times, a lot stronger. And then I'm starting to get aggravated and scared, okay? And then 3 taps, tap, 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 like an index finger on my right deltoid. And I'm thinking, is somebody playing a joke on me? And I rolled over and I said, what? And there's this shimmery thing in front of me. And I just look at it, because I wasn't asleep, okay? And I just black out. Told my dad, my sister at breakfast time. So the next night I decided I'm not going to sleep in that bedroom, I still, I had to work every day as a cabinet maker. So, I was working out every day. So I slept on the couch in the living room, and I woke up at 5:30 in the morning. So it was dark because it was January. I looked at my piano, thinking about what I was going to play that day, and listened to the little fountain in the other room. And so I was awake, not sleep paralysis. I could move if I wanted. Now, the front door was 25 feet behind me, and this entity, 6.5 feet tall, skinny, blue-white, okay, at least it appeared blue-white. It walked the 25 feet, bringing all this blue-white light with it into the living room in about 2 seconds. And it stopped by my right side. And when it stopped there, the whole right side of my body was just basically paralyzed or frozen. Not scary, but I just couldn't move it. And now, my family, we had this family spirit guide that was called Oglegly, that I'd grown up since the age of 3 knowing about Oglegly, that had met several people. And so I'm thinking, oh, I'm going to see Oglegly. Oglegly is going to talk to me. So this entity, it bent down and it said into my ear, not in my head, but into my ear, it said, "Hi, Steve." Just kind of in a, I couldn't tell it was male or female. But the thing was, I was like, 50% of me was scared and 50% was saying, oh my God, I just want to see your face. And I could kind of tell the face. I could kind of tell it, but I knew the shape, and I knew kind of like the eyes were big and had a big head, whatever. And after maybe say 5 seconds or 6 seconds, it unbent and basically went back out. Okay. And then I blacked out. Told my sister and my dad about it, and we did not know what the heck to do, right? So anyways, 6 hours later, and here's the important point that is different than most stories. 6 hours later, 11:30, lunchtime, getting hungry. So I decide, oh, Dad, I'll go get some, some food for us, right? Now, being a guy and being in cabinet making, I had basically worn the same clothes to sleep, and I was working the same clothes the next day. Okay, all right. So I'll just be honest about that. All right. So anyway, so I reached into my right-hand side pocket and pulled out the coins that I had, and all the coins, and I kid people not, all the coins were magnetic. In whatever way you want to call magnetism, I could pick up the coins by the face, by the edge. My dad could do the same thing. This is 6 hours after the incident. The only thing I regret is that I didn't put him in a jar or take a picture. This was 1979, okay? But see, I grew up in a house where weird things happened, okay? And so we just chalked up as another weird thing. So then, so it was the fifth night, I decided to go back to sleep in my bedroom, right? And this is something my dad experienced that I have no recollection of at all. He awoke in the middle of the night and he saw this blue-white, light that was completely enveloping my door, okay? And he was, having been an ex-cop, the what's all this then, from Great Britain, he was getting out of bed to, see what the heck is going on here. And in this case, my dad had this voice inside his head say, Jeffrey, everything's fine. Just go back to sleep. Stephen's okay. And he just went back to bed and just blacked out. And I have no recollection at all. And this all happened in 2 different locations for 5 different people in 1979, 350 miles apart. It's very unusual, very unusual. I haven't heard anything like that, quite frankly.
Yeah. By the time we got married when I was 36 and he was 35.
35, yeah.
And by the time I turned 45, he had already seen 3 UFOs.
Yeah.
And he'd had all these bizarre, abduction experiences. And our research has shown that this blackout period, this missing time, is the signature for the abduction phenomenon. It's quite common. And but all this stuff had happened to him and nothing had happened to me. And I was like, I want something to happen to me, and it finally did. I was
a little jealousy there.
Yeah, I was also at the point where I believed him about 98%, but there was this little kernel of doubt still, that, and then it happened for me. We were driving home at night and we'd had a meeting with our art club, and it was early January of 2005. I was 45 years old at the time. And I was the one driving, and he was in the passenger side. And I saw this white light ahead of us in the sky. And I thought at first it was maybe a plane flying into Palm Springs Airport, but it didn't behave like a plane. And it also didn't have the flashing running lights on the side like planes have. And then it moved very slowly and positioned itself over the freeway or highway that we were on. And we're rocketing towards it. And I think it was coming towards us at the same time because it got brighter and brighter and brighter and brighter. And then suddenly it shot away to the north and was gone over the northern horizon so quickly. It was about a quarter of a second from the whole thing, the disappearing over the horizon, so quickly that it streaked out into a visible, like a line that collapsed in on itself. And I realized that, a white light in the sky can be any number of things, but when it takes off at 10,000 miles an hour or whatever,
it certainly was not a shooting star or anything like that.
No, it was definitely not one of those. And then I realized, oh my God, I finally seen it, my first UFO. And then I clicked into 100% believing him,
Then the most recent one we saw here was in October 2020.
Yeah, and I've seen 2. He's seen 5, and he was with me for my 2 and his last 2. But before that, he was doing the research, but after that, I joined him in the research process. And I was a journalist at the time, and one thing journalists are good at is research. So suddenly our research became more intense and
More focused.
yeah, more focused after that. And it felt like it was moving towards a book, but it still took us about 18 years from that day to when I started writing the book for real.
Yeah, certain things had to happen for it to actually happen.
Yeah.
So, in fact, yes.
Yeah, we know writing a book is not a short endeavor. That's one of those things that you have to go into it wholeheartedly, and it takes time. You said it took what, 18 years to write the book, or did you just not start for 18 years?
No, it took about 18 years to research, and then when I actually finally began really writing it, it was about a full year.
It actually took her having a gallbladder surgery to really kind of end up focusing.
Yeah, that'll slow you
Yeah.
down a little
I was
bit.
sick. Yeah, I was sick for a year, and where I
Oh.
couldn't exercise, or I was kind of chair bound, and I thought, you know what, I'm going to use this sick year to spend more time writing, and took the opportunity.
Make
Yeah, it was a
lemonade.
combination of
Yeah,
that
exactly.
and COVID. Yeah.
Yeah, so
Yeah, I started to say that's what got a lot of us going. I published my first book in September of 2020 in the middle of the pandemic. So yeah, I get that.
yeah, you're stuck
Yeah,
at home
for sure.
anyway, right? So
Uh-huh. Yeah. So tell us what was the most profound part of your experience? What really caught you off guard? Something you didn't expect, or something that's completely alternate to what most people think about UFOs and aliens?
Well, I wasn't expecting to see the whole room filled with blue white light and my body be um basically paralyzed. Now, the thing is,
and know your name.
yeah, I know my name. Now, the
Yeah.
thing.
That's what I was thinking. I was like, and it called you Steve too, so it's like it really knew you.
Yeah, I don't know. I go by Steven, but this entity called me Steve. So, but the thing that was both magical and scary for me, I guess, is that I knew that this entity had been with the family for 4 generations, and I was both thrilled and confused, I guess I would call it, that I knew O'Glegley had saved my uncle's life in post-World War II, and had appeared to several different people in the family, and always appeared the same shape, not necessarily the same color. And when my brother finally saw it when he was 16 in 1982, again in the wintertime, we finally knew, trying to get information on my family was almost like pulling teeth.
Yeah, they were reticent to
We
share.
didn't really talk about this stuff. I certainly didn't talk about it with my friends at school. They would think either I was lying or I was crazy or, living in a haunted house. So this stuff we didn't talk about, but we understood it as far as a family. I mean, my Uncle Doug, literally his life as a RAF pilot was saved by this 6.5 foot tall black entity wearing a red fez called O'Glegley. And in fact, a real quick aside, when his daughter turned 18, where she could drive, he bought her a white Triumph, which is a sports car from England, and the license plate was O'Glegley.
It's a nice
Okay.
tribute.
I mean, my uncle grew up in World War II England as a child. Okay, so he understood what was going on, and he knew the importance, and he gave credibility to this. As far as the coins being magnetized and meeting O'Glegley would be, as far as the UFO stuff, would be the most important stuff. As far as the most important thing in my life, that would be a different thing.
And O'Glegley has been with the Shaw family for a very long time, for we believe 4 generations at least. And there's almost always a woman in the Shaw family, in fact, always, that is an automatic writer in contact with O'Glegley.
Right.
And Stephen's mother, Irene, was the automatic writer in contact with O'Glegley, and her daughter, Karen, was not interested in doing it. She didn't like doing it. But then when Irene passed away, right after that, Karen began to feel this strong urge to do the automatic writing. It's like Old Glegley requires at least one female in the family at a time to be able to communicate with.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And could you tell, just for our listeners who may not be familiar with automatic writing, can you tell a little bit about what that entails?
It's a compulsion that comes over you, like you feel a need to do something. Like, for instance, like maybe as an example, let's say somebody gets up in the morning and they've had this incredible dream and they just want to write it down, or they get an idea. Like for me, automatic writing is music. Okay. I will get this intense compulsion that I just have to sit down and write music. And
But mostly the women would feel this compulsion, and then they would sit down and go into like a trance.
yes, it's like a let's say about you call like an alpha state. It's an alpha state that comes over people where you just basically, and sometimes you don't even use your dominant hand. I tried it on different occasions where I would write with my right hand, even though I'm left-handed, and I did not like the feeling. For me, music is more the way that I work. But yeah, we're talking about 4 different bloodlines, actually. We're going back to Germany with the Newmans, and then the Rose in England, and then the Shaws, and then the Griffiths. And the Griffiths is only involved because Doug was married to my mother's older sister. Okay, but we're talking about at least 4 bloodlines over 4 generations that have had encounters
And
with this entity.
They both prey on the family and protect the family.
Right.
It's almost, I'd see of it kind of like a farmer protecting his prize cow so he can continue getting the milk.
It's a good
so to speak,
analogy,
yeah.
actually. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, let me ask you a question, because this occurred to me while you were talking about the number of experiences that you've had. It's evident that, Stephen, you're sort of a magnet for this kind of activity, because the 2 experiences that Leslie had, she had in your presence as well.
Yes.
So that implies that, you're definitely a focal point for that. Do you find that that's typically the case? Because, I mean, you certainly will find, and I've never had an experience myself, but when I've read about people who have, a lot of times they've had multiple experiences, and then you have huge swaths of the population who've had no experiences,
Right.
and then the people who have seem to have multiple. Have you found that to be true in your experience in talking with people?
Yes, in fact,
It started at 3, age
yeah,
3.
at age of 3 that I can recall, I came into this world very sick. So I remember all the way back to age 1.5. I was in what became Montessori school. It was Jack and Jill at the time, but then it was bought out by Montessori. I remember, I actually remember going for sure going to have my surgery for my tonsils and adenoids when I was 2. And I remember vomiting on my teacher's dress when I was 1.5. So I remember I have a very long memory. I was thinking things at the age of 3 at the park that, I was playing by myself. I didn't like other people, didn't like other children, right? And I was thinking, playing by the giant, concrete turtle in the sand. I was thinking, oh my God, I got to go through this again. This is the 3-year-old thinking these thoughts, okay? And this is absolute truth. So the thing is, like, I've had hundreds, if not thousands, of things happen to me that over my lifespan, and luckily I started studying Tai Chi, and I did my military duty for 6 years, and
I think
been a
that helped him
musician.
cope with it.
Been a musician for almost my entire life, which I have to give the credit to my mom for that. And I think that my ability to cope with things was just different than my younger brother's ability to cope with it. My brother probably was smarter than me in certain ways, for sure. I mean, he taught calculus at a college level just for fun.
But he was more traumatized.
He was more traumatized by this stuff.
These early abduction experiences, and he never became fully emotionally stable person, and he ended up killing his mother, his 2 cats, and himself on his 51st birthday.
Oh, wow.
Wow. Wow.
Yes, and and near the end of his life, he became more and more paranoid and started having some of these sleep disturbances and
that I've had most of my
that
life.
Steve has had, just forever. But so he, Stephen became able to cope with it because he'd been dealing with it his whole life, I think, and not
Yeah,
so
Mike
much
Mike
Philip.
Tyson, who's not my favorite person in the world, but Mike Tyson has a famous saying that everybody's got a plan until they get punched in the face. And so I've been punched in the face many, many times. My brother started getting punched in the face and started thinking that I was like living on the property a 550-mile drive away,
Yeah,
that I was living in a tent and I was sneaking inside the
and
house
stealing things,
and stealing coffee.
Oh,
So when we actually,
Wow.
after he, blew my mom's head off and his head off, we were just looking for the coffee, and the coffee, we couldn't find it. And we've ended up finding it in this really bizarre place in this
yeah,
cabinet in
he
the
hid it
hallway.
behind the
He was
tablet.
literally hiding things. He thought that I was, because he thought that I was like, he installed Ring cameras and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah,
And he just basically lost it. And he couldn't cope with it, and he
right.
just couldn't cope. I'd been coping with it since at least the age of 3, so for me, it was like, okay, there's another thing happening, so.
Yeah. In fact, by the time he saw his third UFO, it's like no big deal. He saw it on the way to work. He didn't stop and not go to work. He just went to
Yeah.
work. It's like, oh, another thing.
Might as well have
another
been a
crazy
satellite.
thing.
Yeah, I saw a USO too, with a witness
Yeah,
off of Malibu, and that was interesting.
Yeah, and that's where I hear about the USOs. I actually
Yes.
put it in one of my
Yep.
books because there's so many of them off the coast of
Yep.
Yes.
Malibu.
In fact, about in 2,000 feet of water off the coast of Malibu, there's looks like a Grecian temple on the floor of the
Mhm.
ocean. It looks like, it's got a colonnade around it and a big flat
Mhm.
area on top. And recently, the Google satellite, has blurred it out now. And I don't know what kind of power you have to blur out a satellite, image, but
Exactly.
I'm thinking high up in the government to be able to
Oh, NASA did it
do
all.
that.
NASA did it all the time with the Apollo missions.
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah, not that hard.
But
Yeah,
definitely
Stephen, you
government.
you kind of alluded to something that I was thinking as you were telling your story about. You seem like an old soul. Like maybe you've had some past life experiences as well.
Hmm.
Do you conscribe to that theory, or do you have thoughts on
Yeah.
Well,
that?
when I play the piano or the accordion, I'll just like say Debussy comes into me or something like that, or Liszt comes into me, and I just let it happen. I mean, I know I've been here many times, and
Yeah.
and I'm also kind of tortured. I'm not honestly, I'll say I'm not necessarily a happy person, but I'm a very stressed person, and music is. I'm glad my mom kind of actually forced me to play music, because music is one of the few things that actually makes me happy.
I think that Steve had a lot of things like that in his early life that helped him deal with it, where Philip didn't have. Philip wasn't a musician. Steve
Right.
was. Steve studied Tai Chi, which,
I taught it too.
and because
Yeah,
Tai
mental
Chi is like
practice.
a moving meditation, he actually gained
Mhm.
some of the benefits of meditation from just doing the Tai Chi. And then later, we studied it in earnest. We began doing the chanting and the deep meditation and the chakra opening work, and learned how to astral project regularly. And I should say that for Stephen, the astral experience was frequently terrifying. It's almost like these troubles that were bothering him his whole life were just on the other side of the veil waiting for him,
Oh wow.
Whereas I loved astral
That's
travel.
not
It was
good.
fun for me, but not for him.
And then I became an acupuncturist and Chinese herbalist for a couple decades, and that was something that I really wanted to do. I felt so drawn to it because I studied Tai Chi first, and even though my first wife thought, "Oh, you should become a chiropractor," well, no, I'm sorry, I don't want to become a chiropractor. What I'm drawn to, what my ability is, and I was really, really good at it. I treated dogs, cats, and humans. And I was just, it was
Perfect.
just what it was me, and I really felt like, don't, Was I supposed to tell you in 1969 not to become a school teacher? I mean, how fair would that be? This is who I am.
Yeah. And I
So
think all those things were instrumental in keeping him
yeah,
sane, all
for
these
sure,
years,
for sure, absolutely.
And poor
Yeah.
Philip didn't have
No, Philip,
those
no, Philip, a
resources.
brilliant man.
So, Stephen, let's talk a little bit about some of the latest things going on in the UFO UAP world. In 2024, the Office of Naval Intelligence implemented a new program called the All Domain Anomaly Resolution
Narrow,
Office
yeah.
to track the or UFO reports. Have you guys been following any of that? Any insight? Any thoughts on it?
Yes, we follow everything that comes out pretty much, but Arrow is they're doing the same thing that Project Blue Book is doing. They're trying anything they can to debunk things. They're actually putting pressure on the pilots that saw the Tic Tac, trying to get them to change their story. And it's the same song. They've given themselves a new name, but they're singing the same
It's
song.
insulting.
Yeah, and there's a very
it's unfortunate. That's for
There's
sure.
a very powerful faction in the government that definitely wants to keep this under wraps and are continuing to do anything they can to
The Pentagon, yeah.
to block it. And it's quite frustrating. For 80 years, we've been wanting full disclosure. I mean, we're not that old, but I mean, the ufologists have been wanting this going back, to the since Roswell. We've been trying to get
you might want to talk about the book Imminent and the area of the brain. That's interesting.
Yeah. The new book by Luis Elizondo, he was in charge of ATIP, which is the thing that was before Arrow. And he released his story to the New York Times and the 3 videos that are now famous, the Tic Tac, Go Fast, and Gimbal videos. And Arrow came out recently saying that, the Go Fast video has been resolved. And it's bull, because what they've done is they've proven that it's a little higher than it previously thought, and it's going a little slower than previously thought. But they haven't resolved what it is and how it's moving without any visible means of propulsion. And but they do that. They come out and say, "Oh, it's been resolved," and people who don't know, not to believe them, think, "Oh, that's not. Oh, so it's been debunked. That's not a real UFO or something." And it's definitely not the case. But Louisa,
well, let me ask you, because that leads into the title of your book. Who they are and why they're here, I think is what you said the title. Oh, and what they're up to. So tell us a little bit about what inspired you to give that title and what you address in that book.
Well, we think we've figured out who is flying the UFOs in our skies, and we think we know what they're up to. So, we wrote the book for a lot of reasons were that, we kept watching shows, and these poor people would be looking up at the sky going, "Who are they? What do they want? Why do they keep taking me?" And we actually had a theory, and we thought, you know what, we better write a book and let people know what the theory is. But from the very beginning of our research, we realized that the UFO data and the UFO facts and the UFO theories were not lining up. They weren't making sense together. And so we had to throw out those theories. The theories that at the time were that these are alien beings coming from distant star systems, all different directions too. Like the blue ones, the blue Pleiades are from there, and the grays are from over there.
Zeta Reticuli.
And what we discovered, in our opinion, is that this is actually a breakaway branch of humanity that we're dealing with. There's a book called The Hair of the Alien, and this is some genetic DNA proof of our theory. This one man was in Australia who was awakened in the middle of the night by these 2 women, and he was paralyzed. And one of these women he described as a hybrid alien. Her eyes were too large, and she had white hair and pointy chin and cheeks. the next morning, he found these 2 hairs in his bed. And these hairs were clear, perfectly clear, like fishing line. And there is no known human type of hair that is perfectly clear. But when they genetically tested the hairs, they tested as human. Bizarre human, but human. They're Gaelic and Basque, and part of the Chinese subset of the population makes up only 1% of the population. And so what we're dealing with is humans that have mutated from us because they've been separated from us for thousands of years.
12,850.
Yes. And so we look back in time to say, oh, okay, well, what we've discovered that they're launching their UFOs. I've read thousands of reports where they're launching UFOs from inside our planet. Either they're coming out of mountains or out of the ocean or out of lakes or up out of the Antarctic ice sheet
Or sides of mountains like...
or the side of a mountain, a hole will open up and they'll fly in and out of it. So they have hundreds of these underground bases all around the world. And this is where they're launching them from. And people don't realize that the Nordic aliens, they are the ones that look exactly like Scandinavian humans.
Right.
They make up 52% of all alien sightings when people actually see an alien. And they look exactly like humans because they are. They are exactly like humans. And we realized that, so why would you go underground? You know, why would the humans break away from us and go underground? And we discovered that the Great Flood really did happen.
Yes, that's true.
It was 12,850 years ago. And the Younger Dryas comet struck the Earth. And the comet was 62 miles wide, traveling at 40,000 miles an hour. And it did what comets do when it enters the atmosphere. A comet is a giant, dirty snowball. And
With rocks.
Big rocks. And so it broke apart. And there were all these flashes, what they call,
Airbursts.
Airbursts, thank you. And so the Uccello horizon is this layer of charcoal laid down over in 10 different countries and 4 different continents, showing that 13,000 years ago, all the forests in the northern hemisphere were on fire at the same time. And that's caused by these airbursts as it comes through the atmosphere. But the largest of the impact zones was in what's now Lake Superior area. And
Yes.
That's what caused the extinction event that happened 13,000 years ago.
Yes, most of the species, the Clovis people and the vast majority of the mammals were basically decimated, wiped out.
Yeah.
A few hung on for a little while, but then also on top of that, remember, Leslie, was the 1100-year event that occurred on top of that showed that there was
Yes.
dramatic climatic upheaval.
Well, we think it's kind of like the Deep Impact scenario. And in that movie, President Morgan Freeman is faced with, an extinction level event coming, right? We're going to get clobbered by an asteroid. And so the plan A is to send the Hollywood heroes into space to blow up the asteroid. But plan B was to sink these deep underground arcs, they called them.
Yeah, these cities and
where they were
bunkers.
going to save 50,000 of our brightest and best and also keep our culture and our technology intact. And we believe that this is exactly what happened. All of these flood myths, there's like 1,200 separate flood myths all around the world, and they almost all begin the same way, where everyone on the earth is warned that a horrible, horrible catastrophe is coming, and to either build an ark or go to high ground or dig in underground is the message.
Right.
And so we think somebody on this planet 13,000 years ago and we think the societies of 13,000 years ago were more advanced than we give them credit for. But evidence of their achievements was essentially scraped off the surface of the world by the 2,000-foot tsunamis.
And the other thing we found too, that I found interesting, having a science background, was that at that time too, that now we have we're advancing with DNA and CRISPR technology and being able to research the 4 base pairs of the human being, that we were, as a culture on the surface, were reduced to about 10,000 individuals especially like, places like, Australia, and we know the Aborigines have been around for at least 50,000.
They
So
call it a genetic
a
bottleneck.
genetic bottleneck. So we do know
Yeah.
that the 8 billion we have now have regenerated from basically
10,000
about
individuals.
10,000 people. So we're less genetically diverse than we were, and we know for a fact that anybody that would know with 1 or 2 years in advance that there was an asteroid or a comet that's going to hit, that we had to have advanced um,
Astronomy, yeah.
astronomy. We had to have it.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And
You
we know the ancient Sumerians had it. So, and the Greeks were rediscovering a lot of this
Yes.
stuff later, but the ancient
Right.
Sumerians knew about precession. They knew all about astronomy. They're brilliant astronomers, really. And so
And
we
they
know,
and they inherited that from previous stuff too.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I constantly go back to the Sumerians my book series kind of follows that. Of course, mine's fiction, but the Sumerian legends, everything from the Epic of Gilgamesh, the Anunnaki, I think it's very possible that this world has been remade a number of times. And I think the further down in the geological record we go, the more likely we are to find more evidence of those advanced civilizations. And I'm really fascinated with some of the archaeology going on right now in Iraq, because some of those sites that they're finding now are making scientists rethink about the history of the human race. And some of the things you're saying about 14,000 years ago is right up there with some of the things I've been reading about what science is rethinking
Yes.
our timeline might
Yes.
be. Because what they've been saying in the past, they're starting to say, you know what, we were wrong. We've made a mistake. And, I think we're going to hear more about that as time goes by and they learn more.
All the
So,
tepes,
yeah.
all the Göbekli Tepes and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Totally having to
Exactly.
rethink that. It's right there.
And so we think,
And is this what your documentary talks about as
Yeah,
well, or
it
is that
does.
something separate?
it's like, so we know why they went underground. And the answer to, well, why didn't they come back to the surface after the catastrophe? And the answer to that is what Steve was alluding to. On top of the Uccello horizon is 1,100 years worth of soil called the Younger Dryas boundary,
Right.
which shows a drastic cooling of the Earth. At the time, we were coming out of an ice age,
Right.
but then this catastrophe happened and it turned us right around and plunged us right back into the ice age for
Right.
another 1,100 years or so. And so they stayed underground because it was comfy and safe. And after a while, they probably became agoraphobes.
Yeah, you
where
got a couple.
the
Yeah,
surface
exactly.
was scary.
Just think about it. You have a couple generations, of kids being born. This is the only thing they know, right? So now it's
Yeah.
like being scary. Like for us, the surface is kind of scary for them. So yeah, you're going to have people who are claustrophobic that are going to say after the catastrophe, "I want to go outside. I want to be a scout." That kind of stuff. So you're going to have that type of stuff, but after a couple generations, you're going to basically have a bunch of people that are they're used to living underground. They're used to living on the food they have down there. And, it's just, human beings are we're, if anything, we're very adaptable. We really are.
And, they didn't lose their technology and their culture, where all of us surface dwellers did. We were all shoved back into the Stone Age from
Right.
the catastrophe. And that's why they're roughly 12,850 years more advanced than we are.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's about right. When you look at the technology, it's not a million years ahead of us, right? It seems to me 10,000 might be about right.
Yeah, they wouldn't have any need for like physical bodies a million years from now. So.
Well, no kidding. I think we could go on with this
Yeah.
topic for probably a couple more hours. I think this is really fascinating, and I'm gonna have to go get your book because I'm really anxious to see all the details of what you
Oh,
have
thank
to
you.
say on that. Why don't you tell our listeners where they can find your books, learn more about you and everything else?
The book is, again, it's Who They Are and What They're Up To, and it's available on Amazon and Ingram. And we have an Instagram page. If anyone wants to communicate with us, go ahead and DM us on Instagram. We're at it's at leslie.shaw.author. And the documentary is
Who They Are. It's on YouTube and it's done by Sky Island Storytelling.
Yeah, we recommend it. If you don't like reading books, the documentary will give you a lot of our theories in a nutshell.
It
More
does. It
of a
does.
nutshell.
Unfortunately, it does leave a few things out.
Yeah,
But
it doesn't talk about the
it's
magnetic
only
coins in his pocket.
it's only 54 minutes long, but it's actually it's
Yeah.
about 400,000 views so far. And
And then our
Wow.
show, we do have a new show. It's we've just had our 14th episode drop, and that's it's called Abductions 101: UFOs and the Paranormal Connection. See, we have we think all these cryptids that people are seeing are genetically modified engineered races done by the Nordics. The Nordics are the ones that we think are in charge because they're the ones that
Right.
met with Admiral Byrd and with Eisenhower. But we think the Greys are an engineered worker race that they've created, and the insectoids are, and the reptiloids are. But no matter how many different alien types there are, they're all bipedal hominids that are perfectly upright walking, creatures.
with the same skeletal structure or very, very similar.
Yeah, and we think that's why they're utilizing the DNA of humans.
And also too the ridiculous need for all this cattle blood, and exsanguinating the species of man. And cattle are just the most commonly known, but you're talking about goats, you're talking about horses,
Right.
it's
And
like,
that's a reference to the chupacabra and all
yeah,
that.
and that's been practically
Just in
proven.
case our
Yeah.
listeners didn't quite catch that one,
Yeah.
but yeah.
And they went underground, we
Yeah.
think, with herds of animals. And I think living underground has made them less viable.
Right.
And that might be what this whole alien breeding program is, and what the cattle mutilations are all about. Is maybe their herds are also becoming less viable too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we want to thank you for coming on our show tonight and sharing your stories and what makes you so unfreaking believable. And I'd like to thank my lovely co-host Jenny. I'm sorry you couldn't be here tonight for this conversation. We hope you're on the mend and feeling better soon. We've missed you on this episode. Listeners, if you enjoyed this episode, please rate and review it on whatever platform you listen on. You can find us on Apple, Spotify, Amazon Music, and Audible.
Thank you for having us.
It was a pleasure.
Absolutely. Our pleasure.
Yeah.
And you can join our Unfreaking Believable Facebook group and follow us on TikTok, X, and Instagram. And we will be sure to post the information that Leslie and Stephen have given us in the Facebook group so that people can go and find it. You can also join us on Patreon for exclusive content. We have a free Patreon subscription, but you can help keep this show going for as little as $1 a month.
And we invite you to visit our website at www.ufbpodcast.com. And if you have an unfreaking believable story, please reach out to us at ufbpodcast@gmail.com because we'd like to hear your story too.
Betsy, you got a quote of the day for us today?
Yeah, my quote of the day is a little something different. I've actually kind of gotten obsessed over the musical Hamilton. I don't know if anybody else has seen it. I just recently discovered it. And I was doing my research for this episode, and I actually found a quote that was not included in the Lin-Manuel Miranda's musical. But Alexander Hamilton said, "To my utter astonishment, I saw an airship descending over my cow lot. It was occupied by six of the strangest beings I ever saw. They were jabbering together, but we could not understand a word they said. A. Ham."
Wow, I didn't know that one. Thank you.
Well, there you go. There you go. Well, you got a nugget to take with you today then as well. Thank you for joining us on the Unfreaking Believable podcast. Remember, as you go out into the world this week, don't just be awesome.
Be unfreaking believable.
See you all next time.